Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Schwer.
Here.
Councilmember Wong.
Here.
Councilmember Nordby is running late, and Councilmember Monge.
Here. All right, thank you. Motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved, Your Honor.
I'll second.
Second member by Schwiers. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Topics. McKnight Field.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
So tonight, we're all going to be talking about the McKnight Field complex. There's many aspects of this. Brandy's put together a really good report, but we'll be covering the McKnight Field, the McKnight Fields themselves, the KUENKEL Field, the Triple Crown batting cages, the Polar Charity, who does the work at the concession stands at the McKnight softball fields, and ball field reservations. So with that, I will turn it over to Brandy and to discuss. It's going to be a lot of information dumped for you guys tonight, so it's going to be just back and forth, and you can give us some guidance. If you're looking for some more information, then we'll follow up with what needs to be taken care of for any requests that you guys have.
Good. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. This is going to be another history lesson, I think. So I spent a good portion of last week doing another deep dive into the files to learn about the McKnight Field area. And this is a presentation of what I found. It's not in any linear sort of order, but I'll try to make it make sense as much as I can. So what I learned is that the total area of the McKnight Field complex, is what I'm going to call it, is 21 and a half acres, and that includes the baseball field, which is now called KUENKEL Field, the 4 softball fields, 2 tennis courts, a t-ball field, the parking lots, and the batting cages and the concession stands, which is in the middle of the softball fields. Part of the land was acquired in 1969 through an eminent domain process and through a HUD grant, and so there are some limitations on that particular area in terms of what can be done with that land. It must be preserved in perpetuity, recreational purposes. The exact boundary of that 11.7 acres is unknown without having a surveyor kind of draw it out for us, but I believe that it's approximately does my pointer work? I think it's KUENKEL Field, about from, I think the 11th Avenue area south is kind of roughly it, but that's just going on what I believe to be the boundary based on the old plat map and kind of the legal description that I could piece together. So the existing conditions of the McKnight complex kind of vary depending on what you're looking at. So on the whole, it needs a little bit of refurbishment, a refresh, I think is how Ron put it. He said that we need new fencing around the entire site, and the interior trail and parking lots require paving. You can see that from the image here. The trail to the concession stand is in some rough shape. The tennis courts are also in disrepair, and the t-ball field is in poor condition, and there's some elements that are missing. The softball fields are in need of some refurbishment and maintenance as well. KUENKEL Field is in pretty good condition. It was updated with the efforts of the school district. They covered the cost to rebuild the pitching mound, which was about $14,000. The project included regrading, resodding, and spreading ag lime. The school also built the press box in 2003. I did not have the value of that in the records that I saw. Most recently, the school district has proposed to install a new scoreboard. There's an image of it on the screen. According to their proposal, it would, the school district would pay for the scoreboard. They would use the 4 ad spots to pay for that cost, and they would not accept any further ad revenue after that. So according to the district representatives, the proposal does not include any revenue that would go, sorry, I said that. If the school district, if the city agrees to accept the scoreboard, then staff recommends that we engage with the city attorney to prepare an agreement that would identify ownership and maintenance responsibilities. So then we've got a couple of lease agreement agreements that have been in place, and one kind of a resolution. It's not really an agreement, but it was a resolution that was adopted in 1979. The first one I'll talk about is the agreement with the school district. So the city has had an agreement in place since about 1974. The most current one with the school district is dated 2011. That agreement has been in place for over a decade, and there's been a lot of changes that have occurred since then. The school district has a lot of new staff, as does the city. The school operations and the city operations are no longer the same as they were 10 years ago. The main difference to the city is that we no longer offer a youth program, and so we don't have a need to use school district facilities any longer. And from what I understand over the past few months of working here and the limited amount of documentation I could find is that there's kind of a muddled history on the implementation of that agreement. There's not always been strict adherence to it by either the school district or the city in terms of the field maintenance, capital improvements, or fees. So over the past few months, city staff, we've been looking at the agreement, and we've had a couple of conversations with the school district initially to start the renegotiation process. And so what we've learned from that so far is that both parties are in general agreement that the informal practices of the past are not going to continue, and that what we come up with for a future agreement will be the go-to guide in the policy document in all things related to the use of McKnight Field for the maintenance and the improvements. And then we've got two other agreements, Triple Crown batting cages and Polar Charities. So in 1992, the city entered into an agreement with Triple Crown, wherein the leasee agreed to construct the batting cage facility in exchange for no rent for 15 years, and that terminated in 2008. Then in that year, a 10-year extension was authorized that terminated in 2018. There was an automatic renewal built into that one, and so that will expire in June of this year. So in terms of concessions, Polar Charities was the other lease agreement that we had in place, and that was operated, the Polar Charities, they operated the concession stand for many years, and that lease expired in November of 2022, and that group has decided not to continue, so that is an opportunity to consider in the future. And finally, the American Legion. In 1979, the Legion requested permission to install lighting at McKnight Field in exchange for use of the field free of charge indefinitely, and the council agreed to that request, and they passed Resolution 79078 that accepted the lights and indicated that the Legion can have free use of the field except for cleanup charges from then on, so 1979 to indefinitely.
Can I pause you for a point of clarity?
Sure.
The Legion uses McKnight Field, or the Legion uses KUENKEL Field?
Sorry, it was called McKnight, but when I say McKnight, I'm referring to KUENKEL.
Thank you.
Good point. Okay, operational costs. So this is something that we were asked to take a look at to give council a better understanding of what it takes to operate the facility and what it costs. So we, Ron and his team put together a annual cost for all of the materials like chalk, fertilizer, grass seed, Roundup, irrigation, mowing, et cetera, and kind of came up with a year value of all of those things. And then we divided that by field, and then divided that by day of how many days there are in the summer, typically. And so just the maintenance and supplies costs about $102 per field per day. And that does not even touch the electric costs. So this I'm gonna struggle with, but I'm gonna do my best to try to explain it. So the use of the fields is a little bit more complicated because to use the fields, the customer must pay a demand charge, which is an additional fee for large utility users to maintain the constant supply of electricity. So when you factor in the demand charge, for KUENKEL Field specifically, that would be $733 a month. And that does not include the fees or just the rate charges. So if they're turning on the lights at all, that's what it's gonna cost for that month. And then in addition to that, then you have the use fees as well. So for 5 minutes, it's $700? Yep, or 2 minutes or whatever, just to flip on the switch. Correct.
For the month, correct.
Oh, 15, okay. So moving forward, just to let you know, the ball field rental rates that we have on the fee schedule now, they do not include these costs necessarily. And so this is what our fee schedule currently, what we collect for rentals is $75 per 4-hour time increment, or $150 per tournament, which is renting the field for the entire day. Or if you want to have a midday drag or any kind of maintenance, then it would add another $300. And I think that would typically occur if there's going to be a tournament for the day. So we also looked at planning documents because, that's very important to city planners. So when we looked at our comprehensive plan to see what it had to say about the McKnight Field complex, it did have 2 specific things. The first is that we should promote shared use of the park and open spaces wherever schools and parks are adjacent, such as McKnight and North High School. And the second thing is that we should continue to provide a high level of maintenance and make improvements as appropriate. And looking at the park improvement plan, that document recommends that we prepare a master plan for McKnight that includes a thorough assessment of the age and condition of existing buildings and facilities to give us a better understanding of the future replacement needs. And it should also consider the existing facility mix, the amenities out there, programming needs, and then what do the residents want to see? Cost estimate should also be included so that we can adequately budget for any improvements. So far, the master plan has not been prepared. There was $10,000 that was set aside for a master plan, but I think when that was considered by the park board, it was more of a layout. And so I think that the master plan name is a little bit confusing. What it really is what I described and not a layout, but it's a hard look at what is the facility, what do we want to see out there in the future. So for the discussion, I've got a couple of points just to get us started. So recommendations and some questions. So the first recommendation is to continue to comply with the HUD agreement like we've done. We will continue to partner with the school district on coming up with a shared use agreement for the facilities. And we should prepare that community-wide park and rec master plan that looks at not just McKnight, but all of the facilities throughout the community. And then things to consider in our discussion tonight is the future of the batting cages, the future of the Polar Charity concession stand. Are the current fee schedule rates appropriate? And what do we think about the donation of the scoreboard? And with that, I will ask questions, or have you ask me any questions, and I can stand here and keep this on, or I can sit down, whatever you prefer.
One question, probably more towards you, Brian, is we met with the superintendent of the schools last Friday, and she was going to get a list of what they thought the needs were going to be. Have you received anything yet?
Not from them, but we put a list together, and we will have that to you. I apologize, I don't have that in front of me, but we do have their reservation schedule for the summer. And it was extensive, so I mean, we'll be looking at those rates and coming back with you guys with some more suggestions on what's acceptable to you guys.
And she also mentioned, the superintendent, Christine, that they are going to be doing their tennis over at one of the newer schools. What's the name of the school?
It's over in Maplewood. They already put a lot of money into that and refurbished those fields.
So the tennis courts aren't needed for that position for the schools. They'll be one of the other ones with the brand new ones.
They said they couldn't, the way their policy is, they cannot invest money into land that they don't own. So that's why they didn't upgrade the tennis courts.
So those were the couple of questions we had when we met on Friday.
Question on
Can I ask a
that.
question? So the school district cannot invest in land that they don't own?
Can't invest in improvements on land they don't own. Was what she told us.
Just makes me question the scoreboard, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Correct.
maybe donated or something.
When you referenced ball fields and the schools, what fields does that encompass, and what does the high school use of city land, and do they have their own fields as well? That's where and Brandy, awesome job putting the packet together. There was a lot of history in there to unpack. I got confused when it started talking about school fields and city fields, and I don't know who uses what.
Can you guys hear me? All right.
Yeah.
So the school district uses the boys baseball, varsity baseball team, and JV team use the Kunkel Field. The girls fast pitch softball use 2 of the fields on the McKnight complex. So that is their home fields. They don't have a ball field on their school property for, any of that. And then they used to use our tennis courts for their tennis team, but like Brandy said, they invested the money in John Glenn, and that's where they play their varsity games there, JV. So girls fast pitch softball, I believe varsity JV, and I believe maybe a 9th grade team, and then the boys baseball varsity, or the boys baseball.
Okay. So,
Also use the T-ball court for practice on occasion too?
Yeah, they'll use that for practice, overflow, but mostly the high school practices at that complex.
so like Richardson has a ball field. That's considered a school ball field or a city ball field?
That is a school ball field.
So they maintain,
Yes, Richardson has 2 ball fields. Cowan has 3 ball fields. What else? Any other ones that you can think of?
Harmony?
Oh, yeah, Harmony. Harmony has a baseball field.
it is that under, well, it's under 622.
It is.
Okay.
So piggybacking off of Tim's question, Tartan High School, do they have ball fields and own their own ball fields?
They do. They have their own full-size baseball field and a girls' fast pitch field on their property.
Okay.
I know last year, there was a concern, of course, this year with all the snow we have, that it took them to almost to the end of the season before they could even use our field because it was so wet out there.
Correct.
We have a problem with that on quite a few years because of the drainage out there.
Well, we do. I mean, they have a short time to get their games in, in the spring before school ends. And, I mean, that complex is built on a swamp. I mean, it is. They filled in a swamp basically to make that complex. So it doesn't take much to, make those fields unplayable. I mean, we do go to extreme lengths sometimes to make sure that, we have to put those fields away in the fall ready to go because we don't have any time in the spring to do any kind of major project or even a minor project. We pretty much have to, once it's dry enough to get out there where we can get the bases set and get the fields drug, they're out there wanting to use them. I mean, they want to, if they have some dry spots in the grass to use, they'll use that just because they have a short period of time to use them or to get their games in.
Another thing we talked about too is that T-ball field, you said the last time it was signed out officially for any kind of games was like 2018, is that correct?
It was used last, but the high school really doesn't, they might use that to go take batting practice. I mean, that's not their primary field that they would use. There's a fast pitch group over the summer that used it, and I'm not sure the organization that put, who organized that or had that together, but they practice on there a lot. There's a tournament that they use the whole complex down there, and they use that field 5 or T-ball field as they played some games on that for some overflow. So that was for like a 3 or 4 day weekend tournament. And then there was one other night that we prepped the field for actually a game. Other than that, it was used for practices in 2022, and then I think 2018 through 2021. We didn't prep it at all for anything. There was nothing scheduled or on it at all, so.
And so does that mean that they're warming up or practicing out in that field without any maintenance?
Yes, pretty much, yeah. And
Normal mowing, of course.
yeah, we, mow it, we irrigate it, that's an irrigated field too, so, we make sure that the grass we fertilize it, to keep it the best that we can. We drag that field randomly just to keep the grass from growing in it, but it's not something that, it's done every single day. If, on our field maintenance calendar that we have, that group, they gave us their schedule, and basically on our field maintenance calendar, it said practice, no maintenance needed. So that's, like I said, we just kind of drag it once a week just to keep the weeds out of it.
In regards to the operational costs, I don't believe I saw labor in there.
I think there was labor in there.
58 an hour?
Yeah, we assumed 1 hour of time at $58 an hour.
So that would be for one field. And, when I was trying to come up with how I was going to break these costs down, is really hard because so basically what I did with the whole thing is, hey, this is what we have to do whether the fields are used or not: fertilize it, irrigate it, mow it. And then I just had the hourly charge, so hey, it'd take an hour to prep a field. And then I took chalk, what we paid for chalk for a year, what we paid for fertilizer for a year for there, and just broke it down to a daily cost. Say, hey, it costs $4 a day to have fertilizer down there, or chalk down there, or whatever are the numbers.
And you all are chalking the lines.
We chalk the lines, we paint, so there's paint in there. We paint the outfield lines because they're on grass. We chalk the infield lines. So when there's adult softball down there versus girls fast pitch softball, there's 3 different base lengths that are out there. So if the girls use it on a Monday night and they have their games on it, and we have something, and they don't use it on Tuesday night, and we have adult softball on there Tuesday night, the bases are longer. They're at 70 feet. The girls' bases are at 60 feet. The girls have there's 3 different pitching mounds out there, which they're installed permanently, but the girls have a circle that needs to be chalked around the pitching mound. The girls have batter's boxes that they need to have chalked in there. Adult softball, we just chalk straight lines down. There's no batter's boxes or, anything like that. So anything different than girls softball on there, it has to be adjusted. And we've had, there's been nights where there's girls softball and then there's adult softball after. So we have to have a guy standing by. Normally we have about a half hour to get in there, switch the fields over to adult softball, drag them, re-chalk them. So that, that requires some overtime sometimes to take care of that.
So nobody from the district does any of that but the city.
No, the city does it. Now, just so you guys have some background, when I started here, 15, 16 years ago, just as a maintenance guy, I was doing the fields. And when the high school was using our fields, their crews came and prepped all the fields, our fields, for their games. And I believe it was that first year that I was here, halfway through the season, their maintenance guy came up to me and said, hey, I guess we're not doing it anymore. You guys are doing it. And I believe that was because how they were taking care of the fields. Now, again, I wasn't in any position to know the backstories of this. I was just out there, and guy handed me, hey, here's some batter's boxes, the sizes, and I'm out of here. So, and I believe the backstory is that how they were taking care of the fields, they were it wasn't up to probably the standards that they should have been. It was my understanding. Now, again, this is all just hearsay, so I don't know this for sure. But from that point on, we took care of them, prepping those fields. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that, because if we got to go down there and they're doing a subpar, maintenance on what the fields are, and that's be dragging egg lime out into the grass, hitting our sprinkler heads or whatever it might be. So I believe in our field maintenance agreement that we're working on with the school district, and I think it was in there prior to us working on this too, is that the city would take care of all their field stuff. I mean, we take care of the fields that we own, the school district would take care of the fields that they own. And when I started here too, we had the NSPAA was big, everything was going on. We used Cowan, we used Harmony, we used Richardson, and we used Webster. So we went and we would do like 15 fields a day is what we would prep on a daily basis using the school district fields. Because we needed them, we didn't have enough fields for all the ball that was going on. But like Brandy said, we don't have any of that anymore. So I mean, we don't need, there's no need for us to use any of the school district fields.
So then, question for the city, and Brian, well, it's like you would know this, or Brandy, did we rent those fields from the schools?
Sorry, did we rent
Did we pay for those school spaces
in the past couple of years?
when, and
Well, historically, I wasn't able to find any records of payments except for last year, the year before. We were the conduit for people that were from outside of the city to rent school facilities. We've stopped that practice now. And in those instances, they didn't get charged for the use of the field, but we were charged a transaction fee of $25.
Back in the day, I believe it was just kind of a, hey, you use our fields, we use your fields. Again, I don't have any proof of that because I was just a maintenance guy then. So I don't know that there was any money exchanged or we had to rent their fields. And last year, we did use the school district, we used Cowan Fields because of an organization that came up, a youth baseball group, a group of guys got together to start a youth baseball because their kids were like, hey, we have no place to play in North St. Paul. So, I believe some of these people got together and they wanted to use Cowan Fields because there's 3 fields there. It could be in one area and they could kind of manage it better there. So that's where we actually went over and prepped their fields. We used Cowan Fields last year, and I believe that's where that $25 fee came in, registration fee, and I don't know if that was per night or one time a year or what, I don't know what that was.
Oh, that fee was just for the one time that it took for Lisa to make the phone call to reserve the fields. Yep.
Okay.
there you go. So the pictures clearly show that there needs to be maintenance on that. Circling back to the school using it, the city caring for these fields, who are we obtaining a certificate of insurance from the city to utilize these fields and the tennis courts as well? If they are, and we have our certificate of insurance, if somebody gets hurt, who is liable and what property is liable for that? Is the city held liable for that because of the fact that it hasn't been upkept? Is district liable for the individuals that are utilizing it? That's where my concerns would be on that level. I mean, I'm just talking to you directly, not like
Yep, I'm
you're
like,
responsible for this. No, I'm sorry.
I believe
These
that
are questions that
I
need to be-
believe in some of the conversations, again, this is my first year being involved with any of these conversations, but from what I gather is that they are given proof of insurance. I believe there is language that says something about that in there, like, hey, you're using our fields, it's on you.
Yeah, there is language regarding insurance in the agreement. Whether or not we have that in our records, I'd have to double check and find it.
That's definitely something we're going to want to look at, make sure we have record of it. The biggest concern on a park end, though, too, is because they're utilizing the services, and we are required to maintain those areas. It falls on the city because we have not maintained them. So if something happens, I'm not I am not an insurance expert, but I can easily say that because we have not maintained it, that we would probably be liable for that situation.
Are you talking about the tennis courts specifically?
The pictures that you had shown, and
Yeah.
I mean, even if there were, gosh,
The school district is not reserving the tennis courts, and I don't even know if anybody is using them. Are they locked?
I
No,
read in the
they're
packet, I
unusable.
think it's no longer in use.
We have them locked though?
No, there's not, we don't put the nets up. I mean, it's just a
we ever put-
vacant tennis court right
We
now.
pull the fences down around them yet?
We did
Fences are
not.
still up? Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there is a big need for the school district to utilize the fields, whether it's KUENKEL fields or the softball fields, and sometimes that, what do they call it, the T-ball? The T-ball field as well. And so with that said, I mean, you know, what kind of either programming can we pull in to make it worth it? Or is there something we can think about in terms of looking at what the amenities are now? Does that make sense?
So the school district uses what, a month and a half probably is what they get out of it on a normal year?
Included as an amendment to the packet that went out, there's another attachment in there that shows for the past 3 years, the reservations of all the different organizations for all of the fields for the entire summer. So it gives you a grand total of how many times each field was rented for the date and who is renting them.
Yeah, normally whenever school, I mean, as soon as they can get on the fields in the spring, the school, till basically school is out, is when they, and I believe, I can't remember if they can have playoffs, if they make it to the playoffs, if that's after school or if that has to be before school ends. But basically, once school is done, they're done using the fields.
So it looks like they were, if it was a decent spring, looks like the March 13th, they would have started up there.
Yeah, I think they had that scheduled for this year, March 13th.
And
What?
it looks like it
There
goes
might be a
down.
little snow on the field still.
Yep, so they had wishful thinking this year. We all do.
Yeah.
Looks like the 17th of May is the last time they have the KUENKEL. But looks like the softball fields go on a little bit till June 2nd. And we do not have any mounds, right, over at that?
Yeah, it's on in the complex, that the 4 fields or the pinwheel, there's no pitching mounds on there. That's basically softball, slow pitch, fast pitch. I know that the NSPAA used that when they got smaller. They could kind of run all their different programs up there. Any of the youth baseball, they could utilize Casey Lake, Lower Casey or Casey 1 has a mound on it, and Upper Casey, which is a little bit smaller field, but it's a baseball field, and that has a smaller pitching mound on it too.
I know we're talking about McKnight Complex, but how much did you do at Casey last year as far as field prep?
Well, that same group that where I was talking about using the group of guys that got that youth softball together, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's on the field maintenance calendar for last year. I mean, I would say there was maybe 3 times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, we prep that field down there.
And there's 4 fields at Casey?
There's Casey 1 and 2. There's 4 fields total down there. The 2 main fields are 1 and 2 is what they use. Field 1, what's his name? Jerry Bell.
Bell.
Yeah. Jerry Bell from the Twins. I think he was the president of the Twins for a long time. He got some money from a Twins fund down there, and that was redone, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago.
I was just curious to see what kind of I know it's a little bit off topic, to see what kind of revenue or what kind of events we had down there as well.
Yeah, but that group used that, and prior to that, there was another like a traveling baseball group that for North St. Paul. There were some people from North St. Paul, but they just got a group of kids together, and they used it prior to that.
You gave me a tour of the facility on last Thursday, thank you. So I was able to walk around. We went into the concession area. We still don't know who owns all the equipment in there. There was nothing that really divided up, so nobody has an idea of all the machines in there and different things as far as for that building too going forward. questions of you?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the ball field reservations, and I see outside of the school district, there are 3 different organizations reserving the field: 3M, Minnesota Magic, and the Legion. So just to clarify, is the Legion is not paying for their use?
No, and the baseball field, the Legion field, just so everyone knows, that ball field is kind of like it's a premier ball field. It's a really nice field. The Legion over the years has taken really great care of it. There's Ron Adams that used to be I think he was the coach down there for a long time, 20, 25 years or something. He was very particular about that field. He, always, there's a cart, they used to own a cart down there. We have a cart down there also, because their cart that they had, it was really old and kind of dangerous. So we got rid of that. We purchased a new one a couple years ago, and we put our older one down there. But they used to, after their games, they would drag the fields out and kind of, we tarp the mounds. The mounds are made out of clay. The mound is made out of clay down there. The batter's boxes have clay in them down there. So it's a totally different field than one of the softball fields, and it's like a high-maintenance field. So the Legion always did a great job with, they're like, hey, we'll help you out doing this. So after the games, they'd put the fields away good. We'd go down and prep the fields for them when we got the schedule for, what their schedule was. But really, the only people that use that field are the high school uses it in the spring. In the summertime, the Legion baseball team uses it, and the VFW baseball team uses it. And I don't know if there's I think the last couple of years, again, don't quote me on this, but I think the VFW, they didn't have a team. I don't know if there was funding for it or if they didn't have the kids for it. But normally there was, and them were basically the people that use that field. That field was never rented out to just anybody to go use it. I mean, I refer to it as the Legion field because that's kind of, what it is, or how I look at it. Yeah, so.
Thank you.
We we found that the Legion had some agreement when it came to the field itself. As far as that, so that's one section of what we need to look at, and the part of that is just they have to take care of cleanup and things like that, but they don't pay for the field rental itself. Is that correct, Brian? Okay. So that's one piece of the puzzle because we did find that agreement. Is the Legion able to take care of their own chalking so we don't have to have city resources do that? I would think being they're a high-grade team and they have, I would think they'd be able to take care of that part themselves, and then we would charge rent for anybody that uses the softball fields so we can maintain those.
I mean, that could work. They're gonna need the right person.
Yep.
But
nobody plays on that but them, so if they screw up, they're screwing themselves up.
Sure.
But the other one, we rent out to other people, so, is what I'm saying.
Yes. So there's the group that uses that they're pretty specific
Yes.
on that, yeah.
I would add that we wouldn't restrict the use of that field to just the Legion, though. If somebody wants to rent it, it will be reserved.
Well, we have to, I don't know, they provided the lighting, the booth and stuff like that. That's kind of a different avenue, I think, compared to the regular fields themselves.
Do we own the land?
Yes, it
And
was the
that
land
would
that
be
was
public.
purchased with the HUD money.
Well, they
Yeah,
Well,
donated.
for public
Did they
purpose.
Public purpose.
It's a donation.
Did they donate? Okay,
Well, the Legion donated the lighting, and that is all.
okay. 'Cause
Well,
I was
that's
told
all
in
that I have
60
record
that
of.
They donated land too, so.
No, the land was from a grant from HUD, so the federal government. And so with that grant, there is specific restrictions on the perpetual use of that. It has to remain open to the public as open space or recreation. So that's why the boundary of that, which we don't have access to at this minute, is pretty important because we can never take it out of recreational use without permission from HUD.
Sure. And I would think we'd look at that as a different rental agreement then, as far as the pricing, because that's a different style field, maybe?
Potentially, yeah. But as it stands, we if anybody wants to rent the field that's not the school district or the Legion, they would rent it for $75 for 4-hour increments.
Has that been included as Kunkel as part of that agreement for $75? Was that specific?
The
I haven't heard
75,
anything except for the softball fields for the $75. So that's
Oh,
why I'm asking the question.
the $75 is for the, it's per the fee schedule. So that was adopted back in December. So the fee schedule is everything that, under the sun, that somebody might have to pay the city for, like a building permit, for example, reservations for park shelters, for example, or the ball fields. So the $75 is any of the fields
And that
for
number,
4-hour
do
increment.
you have any idea how the last council came up with that number?
I don't know that it was the council necessarily that came up with it. Maybe
Or
there's some
Park
guidance
and
here,
Recs
but
or somebody, or
Isn't it generally staff kind of do a look
Yeah,
at
I
that?
can address
and-
that.
okay, thank you.
So, yeah, it was a group effort. So we would get input from Public Works and Electric to pull together the costs that they have for those fields. And they came up, well, what the final was for the $75 charge, that's actually probably about half of what the cost is to actually do it. But we thought, it's a public good, it's for the kids in our city, in our community, so we felt that was an appropriate price at the time.
We didn't talk about residential, non-residential, or anything like that, just a flat fee is where it was pretty much looked at?
No, historically, it was separated out, correct, Ron, with that,
Yeah, I wasn't involved, with coming up with the numbers, but if, just from hearsay and what I heard, just to echo what Brian said, is that I believe I want to say the number was $150 to $60 or something per field prep, and I think they had discussion about it and talked about it, and they're like, that's crazy, it's too much money, people can't afford it, or the organizations couldn't afford it, so I think they cut it in half, and again, I don't know how that number was, come up with, but
but there was a separation between residential, non-residential, or nonprofit.
Can you,
As far as the charges.
community-based organizations?
I think that probably over the years, there was something residential versus non-residential. I'm just guessing based on the users of the fields and the community center, for example. I know that when there was the community center membership fees, there was resident versus non-resident. So I would imagine, I don't know for sure, that it could have been that way in past fee schedules for the field rentals. It's certainly a discussion that we could have now. There's no reason why we couldn't modify the fee schedule to benefit residents versus non-residents.
Appreciate the information where it came from, I was just curious.
If I may, we are talking a lot about the cost of things, and I see that 3M is well represented on the schedule. I would like for us to kind of entertain a kind of a public-private partnership there. I think that is something worth investigating if we want to continue to invest in these fields, and that might be helpful.
Yeah, we learned that from the one we took the tour of Conway, the dedications and things like that.
Very doable.
Then the tennis courts, of course, we were looking at that, and the fees, or the conditions, so, is there anything else that came up with that as far as,
no, there's two sets of tennis courts which have 3 tennis courts in each one, and the main, I guess the ones, if you drove into the parking lot that are directly to the north of, there's a set of tennis courts down there that they're just in disrepair. I mean, the fences, someone stole all the hardware off of them, replaced the hardware, I think 2 times on it, and someone keeps stealing the hardware off it just to keep the poles from falling down, and they're kind of all over the place. The courts are, like I said, we put Roundup on them because the grass grows through them, and I mean, they're shot. And the fencing looks terrible because all the hardware is gone again and the poles are hanging. My opinion, we should take that fencing down, and we have some money this year to redo that parking lot down there, but I mean, it wouldn't be enough to, I don't believe, if we just even paved over that whole tennis court area that's there right now. There's a whole nother set of tennis courts back further to the west, that they're not great either. They're not nearly as bad as these ones, but I think last year we only put up 1 or 2 nets in there because there's some big cracks, and it's really kind of dangerous probably to play out there with those. But the one set of courts, I mean, I'd like to do something to make it look a little better.
I think at this point, the courts, the tennis courts are not in use. There's not any plan to use them or reserve them. They're just kind of sitting mothballed at the moment. Future considerations, I think, will come forward as we do like a system-wide recreational plan, and that will take a little bit of time and some outreach.
I know that the one set is really bad, taking the fence down from that, but is there any other things until we did get that far? I know there was some outdoor storage maybe we talked about there. We could be able to fence in some of the things that the city has troubles storing right now.
And looking into that, and speaking with Brandy as well, it's not zoned for that, and we don't know that it was even an allowable use with the HUD situation that we have, but we're still looking into it.
Even temporary?
We'd have to change zoning for one, but we'd have to look at the wording on it.
Okay, that's new information.
They're
It
park
is, it
benches,
is.
big, long
Yeah.
park benches.
So then I would probably take them all down, and I'd say, or at least lock them up so people can't get in there.
Yeah, and get hurt.
No, it's, I mean, my opinion, the tennis courts, everything just needs to be pulled out and leveled, and there's nothing really left to be used.
So the other part, we're gonna go to the.
Batting cages?
Yes, thank you. Batting cages, and then the, kind of the middle of where the cooking or the concession is pretty much kind of a dead issue right now, because nobody's stepped up to say, hey, we wanna run that, or can we rent that from the city? So we'll just worry about that one. But the batting cages themselves, it sounds like we need to address that as far as how long the lease has been, and it's gone on quite a few years after the original agreement.
Yep, 15-year lease originally. At the end of that, they renegotiated for a 10-year extension on that. That was just a one-time fee of $1 for them to be there for those 10 years. They took care of all the expenses. The city doesn't take any or pay for any expenses through the building. But at the end of that, that'll be up this June. And so we need to decide, do you want to extend it? If you want to extend it, for how long? Do you want to keep it at a $1? Do you know, so we have a lot of information that we could,
We own the building.
we own the building.
I was closed when I was there with Ron, so I never seen it. Do we know?
They do have online pictures in there, see the inside of it, but yeah, they're,
Or is the roof age, and is it original, everything original on the thing?
the furnace has been replaced twice, the roof has been replaced twice, so that part is good, and it's been replaced since the hail that we saw last May, so that's good.
Asphalt roof then. It's
It is.
flat.
Mhm. There has been upkeeps, they've done inspections on it before, where they've updated the railing and a few other things on the building as well.
Do you know what kind of usage it gets for how many people they're serving?
We spoke with Dennis Bartholomew, who will speak later at the council meeting, but he was saying that this time of year, like on weekends, they could get 500 to 1,000 people in and out of there in the batting cages during a day.
Paying or like parents
Correct.
coming? Okay.
Nope. Yep.
Taking one minor step back to what Councilmember Wong said, just out of curiosity, if we found a partner for any of these facilities, I would be curious, if we found a wonderful donor, what the cost would be to convert those old dilapidated tennis courts to the pickleball courts, just to have a number in the back of our head where, let's say 3M wanted to step up and fund these, just to have a number in the back of our head, so we could talk apples to apples would kind of be nice in my thinking.
We can look into that. You'd be starting over. You'd be taking it out and starting over and rebuilding it, but we can look into that, yes.
I think the master plan for the parks would be really informative to see what kind of amenities would need to be there. Of course, pickleball is super popular at the moment, so that could be extremely likely. But I do look forward to that master plan.
think soccer is very popular around too, so we don't have much when it comes to soccer either. So it seems to be quite a bit compared to some of to baseball over the years.
As for myself, I'm thinking that the batting cages at this point in time is an asset. If they're bringing that many folks in to recreate, in terms of a lease extension, what that looks like, I'm considering a shorter lease just because we do have a master plan potentially coming. So to be mindful of that. So maybe like on a year-to-year or year to 2-year basis would be my thinking.
How big is the batting cages, square feet? Do we know?
Sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head.
And as for the batting cages, do residents get a different rate there, or is that kind of like a across the board?
These are going to be great questions to ask Dennis and
Okay.
our council. Yes.
My apologies, thanks.
Anything else anybody wants to? I think we kind of.
And as far as, if you don't mind, moving on to the concession stands themselves, I mean, we could take it to, put it out in RFP. We could speak to some agencies around town that might have the ability to do something like that. For next steps, if you'd like that.
I like to see traffic-wise, how much. We got to find out what we own and what we don't own too up there first. I think part of it too.
And that gentleman did reach out, and I was waiting to find out some information before we met with them to go over the exact pieces of equipment, but that will be happening soon.
Does the high school have like a booster club or something like that?
That was an idea. The VFW was an idea. We have a foundation that we were looking at. So there were some other options, but we haven't reached out yet.
Perhaps an RFP would be appropriate.
Struggle with a lot of school functions as it's run during the summer. You know, North High used to have DECA, which used to run the coffee shop at the community center. That was really run during the school year. So, and again, I understand that there's the it was like $1 lease or whatever, and there was, I've heard numbers anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 a year generated in revenues from that. If we put it out for RP, I would like to see it maybe be $2. Double our money, we'll start low, but there's money generated, there's money earned depending on where it goes. The city also has expenses to the building as well that, again, parks don't pay for themselves, but it would like to see where we can make a slightly larger return. I'd like to see that part of it put into consideration.
Could that be a
well.
percentage or something? of
Yeah, nothing.
that gets reinvested back
Yep.
into the field or?
Yep.
Okay.
Because I'm really leery of $1 agreements on anything, because it's just, we have a lot of expenses to be able to keep up things and be able to make it whole, but still be able to provide for the community and some charities.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to go down that road for me.
The 40 to 60 number was kind of in the heyday of it over there.
I'm sure it was.
And nowadays, people are really having issues with trying to get volunteers to show up at them.
The firefighters had it for a while.
They did.
And then it went down to a couple other groups after that.
Yep.
Yep.
So staff, where do you want us to go?
I think-
I mean, as council, where do you want us to go? I apologize.
No, I think we have some good direction, RFP for that. You guys will still be able to hear some more input for the batting cages this evening, and then,
As far as fields?
the fields, just to make, with the Legion, 75, yeah, that has been passed by council last November, I believe it was. So unless you guys come up with another resolution, that's where we will be at. And it is
Legions has their contract,
their agreement.
so I think we have to stick with that even, in my mind, because it was there, but I think they have to take care of their own field.
And then the cleanup,
What everybody thinks about that.
Is there a written agreement?
There's a written agreement from Mayor 1979 that they donated. I looked it up because it was 50,000 for the lights, so 1979, so I looked up and a house cost 63,000 in 1979. So just to kind of get an idea what the value of $50,000 worth of lights were compared to nowadays. So there was that agreement there, and it was going forward, that type of thing. So it was lifetime, what's considered a lifetime. That's why I don't like these contracts where and anything where we have such open-endedness.
and don't mean to put you on the spot there, Soren, but
I was going to ask.
Oh, yeah.
No, Brandy and I talked about this a little bit, and we looked into it. You know, you can enter into, there's some technical nuances on this. You can enter into some forever contracts. It depends on the wording. What you have that candidly is just plain as day is an intention for it to be forever. And that was kind of the deal that was cut with the city at the time. And so I think there's the issue of sort of a pragmatic aspect to it. It says what it says, and you did get the lights. We're still using the lights. I think we have arguments to suggest that, you know, contracts that are forever are disfavored. But this was a resolution by the city. You accepted the lights. They're still being used. So if we were to want to walk away from it, I think we'd have to have some more involved discussions on that. But in general, the resolution is pretty clear.
Yeah, and it was good faith on both sides. So for me, I would think we would be able to continue with that, but just have them take over the chalking and not, you know, like they had it before. And all of a sudden, somebody handed you the equipment and said, here, you're in charge of fields now, goodbye. So I think if that would, and plus there was an agreement too that they would do any kind of cleanup. So there is written language for that as well.
and you would like that in moving forward to do it that way? Do we need to vote on something like that, Soren, or?
No, I think what we can do is, Brian, if you have direction, I mean, there's an opportunity to reapproach them and just talk about kind of, it's something we've looked at, the agreement or the resolution was done in '79. We'd like to clarify some things. It's been a while. My lawyer math is failing me at the moment, but it's been a while. 60, 70 years if I round up, Tim.
You don't want the bill that much, do you?
Yeah. No. But I think it is a tricky situation because in general, there are legal and technical arguments to say that, look, the foreverness of it is presumptively invalid. I think what you have to just purely deal with is the language on that resolution is clear. As a governmental entity, you accepted the lights. You've been using the space. That's been the deal. Do you want to create some sort of technical argument to get out of it? To a community partner.
I think they're willing to work, the people that have reached out to me, everybody's willing to work with what we have, so I don't think it has to be anything like that, in my opinion. But if they would pitch in and get some of the cost for some of the, the maintenance as far as the chalk, and we'll mow like we always mow. I mean, that's not gonna change, because if KUENKEL wasn't there, you would still have to mow, otherwise we'd look like Hillcrest Golf Course. So there's things that, as owners of property, we have to do no matter what. It's the above and beyond, in my mind, hey, let's work together on it. Anybody, does that sound okay?
I think it's worth engaging in the conversation if that's how people feel, yeah.
Because they've been good to the community, and I just want to make sure that we're fair. We're not going to give it away, but we're going to be fair.
We have good direction from you guys, so I think within regards to time, we could wrap that up.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call, do I have to do anything? Because I do this wrong every time. Just adjourn the meeting. Do I call to adjourn the meeting? Motion to adjourn the meeting? Sorry. Let's see, I did it wrong.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, especially after.